Title: Israeli and Palestinian Conflict News, Biden International Strategy, how his accentuation on common liberties applies to Palestinians. Israel's airstrikes on the aggressor Hamas development in Gaza have constrained the Middle East onto Joe Biden's plan in the midst of new inquiries concerning how his accentuation on basic freedoms applies to Palestinians. It has likewise exposed the degree to which the Israeli right has been engaged in involved East Jerusalem during the administration of Donald Trump. Turmoil there started more extensive fights, and could draw the Biden organization all the more profoundly into the long-standing Israeli-Palestinian struggle even after this most recent seismic emission decreases. That is a possibility President Biden and his senior consultants might want to keep away from. They've clarified their discretionary needs lie somewhere else. As of not long ago, they've received a relaxed moderate methodology in this cemetery of American drove harmony drives, unobtrusively attempting to re-establish a few components of U.S. strategy overturned by the Trump organization's brazenly supportive of Israel position. That has implied focusing on fixing burst relations with the Palestinians, and voicing logical help for a reasonable Palestinian state as key to an enduring harmony with Israel. Yet, they've determined the possibilities for another round of exchanges as hopeless, and are resolved to move the focal point of American international strategy to China. Recognizable example. The abrupt shift back to the Middle East this week has seen a revisitation of a customary example. In open articulations, the President and his Secretary of State Antony Blinken have strongly rehashed the standard American equation about Israel's entitlement to self-protection even with Palestinian rocket fire. Strategic re-engagement. The Biden organization additionally impeded UN Security Council activity this week, where the U.S. frequently remains solitary in safeguarding Israel from analysis, contending that an assertion or public gathering would block in the background strategy. It has now consented to a crisis meeting on Sunday. Yet, it needed to quickly venture up its game on the conciliatory front without a full group set up. There isn't so much as a chosen one yet for envoy to Israel. Mr. Blinken and other senior authorities have been working the telephones with their Israeli partners. There have been critical calls with Arab nations to attempt to help shape a provincial reaction drove by Egypt. Furthermore, the Secretary of State has dispatched his high-ranking representative for Israeli and Palestinian issues, Hadi Amr, to the district. In spite of the fact that Mr. Amr is a mid-level negotiator without the sort of rank held by uncommon emissaries in past organizations. One sign of a more fearless position in the background discretion would have been to send somebody more senior, says Daniel Kurtzer, a previous U.S. representative to Israel. Red lines in Jerusalem. Obliterating for what it's worth. The Gaza airstrikes are a natural area, not at all like the blast of agitation in Jerusalem which started them. The eastern piece of the city, caught by Israel in 1967, guaranteed by the Palestinians and home to blessed destinations for both, has consistently been a flashpoint. Its future was set to be resolved in harmony dealings. However, conservative Israeli governments along with Jewish pioneer bunches have been crushing out the Palestinians. And that movement turned out to be especially audacious during the Trump organization. President Biden's group didn't see cautioning signs that this was getting flammable, says Hussein Ibish. What it neglected to do was forestall the Israeli right, both the pioneer development and government, from squeezing forward with truly provocative proceeds onward the ground. A mission by the pilgrims to oust many Palestinian families set off a rush of fights. That was enhanced by Palestinian indignation regarding blundering Israeli policing at the Al-Aqsa Mosque, situated on a mount adored by Muslims and Jews. There was likewise wrath about plans for conservative Jewish patriots to walk there through a Muslim area, which was cancelled without a second to spare. The fire spread to exhibits of fortitude by Palestinian residents of Israel. What's more, that has set off another and disturbing influx of mutual viciousness in Israeli urban areas with blended Arab and Jewish populaces. The Biden organization should set red lines, says Daniel Kurtzer. It needs to advise the Israeli government to simply stop it, with regards to provocative strides in East Jerusalem, he says. They should say we support Israel's entitlement to self-protection, however requirements to reach a conclusion. The State Department gave an assertion calling for de-acceleration on the two sides in Jerusalem, in the blink of an eye before the Hamas rocket fire changed the discussion. Furthermore, Mr. Blinken has pronounced profound worry about the viciousness in the roads of Israel. However, it is an omen of what might be on the horizon, says Ibish. What might be said about the Common Liberties Plan? Another test for the Biden organization is the way to apply its message of a revisitation of qualities-based international strategy to the real factors on the ground in Israel, Gaza and the West Bank. In late articulations, Mr. Blinken has rehashed that Palestinians and Israelis merit equivalent proportions of opportunity, poise, security, and success. Khaled Al-Gindi of the Brookings Institute calls the recipe new and critical, yet additionally dubious and confusing. Does it apply to the present time and place, he ponders. Or then again, is it optimistic in a last status plan? It hasn't been operationalized, so we don't have a clue where it fits in. I figure they don't have a clue. The left wing of the Democratic Party has gotten progressively vocal about scrutinizing what it sees as the glaring lopsidedness in the activity of each of the four qualities. It isn't clear what kind of political effect this will have. The legislators testing the Democrats' customary supportive of Israel position may not be slanted to a standoff with Biden on the grounds that he has advocated key causes that they esteem on the economy and environment. However, they are pushing to apply general guidelines of common liberties and global law to the treatment of Palestinians. They are requiring the organization to utilize the $3.8 billion in yearly Israeli military guide as influence, keeping that in mind. Furthermore, in addresses on the House floor on Thursday, some outlined it as a racial equity issue. Ayanna Pressley, from Massachusetts, who is dark, said she was no more unusual to police ruthlessness and state-authorized viciousness. What the Biden organization might want, says Kurtzer, is to see the current round of Israel-Hamas battling reaching a conclusion. The circumstance in Jerusalem declining into whatever you consider to be ordinary, and afterward they can return and zero in on different things. In any case, the serenade "No equity, no harmony," one of the energizing cries at hostile to bigoted fights in the U.S., rang out at a Palestinian show held before the State Department this week. Contingent upon the new typical, this may serve to be a determined method of keeping the Israeli-Palestinian struggle on the Biden plan.